All right, thanks for coming back for another episode of Million Dollar Fast Track, where Barron's Top 100 producer Erin Botsford helps answer advisors' most pressing questions. Today's is a good question. This is about meeting with all of your clients, or do you have junior associates? So here's the deal. Okay, look, we all go through it. We get really good at bringing in new clients and new prospects, and we sell ourselves very well, and we promise to be all things to our clients. We're at their very beck and call, quite possibly forever. But that's no way to run a business. You need to have people around you to support you, not only in the admin side, but in sort of the client services and licensed members of your team. It's about building a business, not just being your name on the door. But I don't want to be the one to tell you that. I want Erin to explain how it all comes to pass and why you need to have these things. So Erin, from the very beginning, why do you want to have junior associates? Why do you want to have members of your team meeting with your clients?
Yeah, you want to have licensed members of your team meeting alone in rooms with your clients. Why? Because someday you want to have a business that can run with or without your day-to-day involvement. Now, there's a famous author named Michael Gerber, and he wrote a book called The E-Myth Revisited. In that book, it's such a great book, and every advisor should read it and have it be their business Bible. Michael Gerber says, do you have a business or do you have a job with a great boss? Or he says, do you have a job with a lunatic as your boss? Actually, is what he says. Because for whatever reason, most businesses in this country, what they really do is they hire other people to do the actual work of the business. You can think about example after example, but one classic example is that of a dentist. I always ask advisors, when was the last time your dentist cleaned your teeth? And if they're honest, they typically say, never, because dentists hire other people called hygienists to do the actual maintenance work of the business. Now, keep in mind that dentist is there. He's at the practice most days. He sees all of the patients that are on the schedule, which could be very much like you. You're not going to just be away from your business forever. You can see that meetings are happening, but you're not necessarily the one doing those meetings. So the sad thing about our industry is, for whatever reason, that memo just never made it to our industry. So we have advisors who are consistently and constantly meeting alone, or maybe they'll have an assistant in the room with them. But again, they're the end all be all. They are the person giving the advice. They're in on every meeting. And the problem is you end up running out of hours in the day and days in the week, and you end up getting stuck. And I can tell you from a business perspective, that is absolutely no way to run a company.
Yeah, super frustrating. And I understand that. I understand the idea of I want to be all things to all people. So what do you think is one of the reasons why advisors have so much trouble hiring a team and delegating those relationships to those team members?
Well, I have to tell you, it all starts here. It happens here because they tell themselves stories like, well, nobody could do the meeting as well as I can, or the clients bought me and my expertise. They want me to be the one giving the advice. I remember, Blake, when I came to this crossroads, when there was no more hours in my day, and I read Michael Gerber's book, and I desperately wanted to have conference room filled with clients of my firm, and I wasn't in any one of them. I knew that had to be a step that I took to eventually end up being able to sell my company. And I remember going to my branch manager at the time, and I was wrestling with this decision. And I said, Susan, I set out as a goal. I said, someday I want to have 2 offices, and I want to have 7 conference rooms filled with clients of my firm, and I'm not in any one of them. Now, by the way, I didn't have anything like that going on, but that was my vision. And I said, but how do I do that? I'm just so afraid. I don't want other people to go in and screw up the relationship. And after all, every advisor knows how hard it is to, one, go out and prospect, and 2, close that prospect and convert them into a client. What we're so afraid of is that somebody is going to screw up that relationship, something that we spent years developing. And we're afraid that somebody is going to be somebody that works for us and screws it up. So we wrestle with this, and we tell ourselves lots of other stories so that we don't have to deal with that. Now, Susan asked me a profound question that day. Remember, she said, Erin, okay, what if these other people, what if they could only do the meeting 65% as well as you can? Would that be good enough? Well, me, I remember going home and just, thinking through it and got the spreadsheet out. Well, if I had 7 conference rooms filled with clients at my firm and they were all getting 65% of the results that I would have gotten, and I determined mathematically that yes, that would be a good thing. And I don't know why, but that is the one sort of equation that got me over the hump. Well, it turned out, Blake, that the people that work for me, because I trained them myself, were actually not only as good as I was in a conference room, but oftentimes better. And so, what you want to be able to do is divide your clients into A, B, C, and D. And especially for those C and D clients, what was really nice is those clients suddenly started to feel very important because the advisor I put in with them, the advisor was thrilled to be meeting alone and giving advice to those clients. And those clients recognized that. They were so in love with this advisor because that advisor truly took an interest. And let's face it, when you still have C and D clients on the books, for us, we loved those people when they came in. They were our first people that trusted us. And we certainly, for me, I never wanted to kick them to the curb. In fact, I wanted to make sure they had the best advice money could buy, but it really couldn't involve me. And so it was kind of a win-win because it was a great client for one of my servicing advisors. And the clients felt wonderful that it was being taken care of so well, and it was a win-win. And so there is a 3-step process that I teach advisors on how you can eventually we call it get out of the room. It starts with a year of training. In year 2, then you basically turn over all your C and D clients to licensed members of your team. You turn over the B clients to licensed members of your team. I even went so far as I turned over all clients, A and A plus clients, to licensed members of my team. And why was that? Because what I realized, and there was a method to the madness, is that I always, on my A and A plus clients, I had those appointments scheduled around, 3 or maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I would take them out to dinner after their, let's call it their quarterly meeting or their semi-annual meeting. I took them out to dinner because I realized that my best clients, Blake, they would much rather spend time with me over a glass of wine or a fine meal than across the desk looking at a spreadsheet.
100%. And I love that. And I think about just the ability to get into the owner's box, to get out of the room, to have a business that runs with or without your day-to-day involvement. And it's creating money, it's creating jobs, it's creating relationships. It's just growing kind of on autopilot, right? And you're still at the helm, but you're just using the autopilot. I love that, and being able to spend that time and be present with those A plus clients because you're not focused on meeting with every single person.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful. And I think the follow-up is the enterprise value you create in your business is truly next level because you've eliminated what seems like all risk for a potential buyer.
Yeah, and as you know, I tell the story that when it came time for me to sell, again, I had 2 offices, I had 7 conference rooms that were consistently filled with clients of my firm. I wasn't any one of them. In fact, one year, 2015, I ended up taking 6 months off because I really wanted to know. I'd written a book called 7-Figure Firm: How to Build a Financial Services Business That Grows Itself. And I thought, does my business really grow itself? Well, when you take 6 months off, and I went to India for a month, I went to China for a month, I went to Africa for a month, and I took the summer off. And in 2015, that year, my firm had a record year. So I really, truly had built something that could grow with or without my involvement. Now, it became very important when I sold my firm because I'm told on the day that the buyer bought my firm, he bought another woman's firm as well. I'm told she had about the same amount of AUM on the books as I did, maybe the same amount of revenue. And I was told that she had employees, but clearly she had not empowered her employees to meet alone with her clients. Now, this woman ended up having 2 really big things going against her. One was all of her clients were used to and expected to meet with her. And second, she'd had a massive stroke and she had to sell. So unfortunately for her, she ended up getting 25 cents on the dollar compared to me, because as you alluded to, Blake, that buyer had to take into consideration how many of those clients were going to leave because she was no longer there. And I always tell financial advisors, and if you're listening to this message, I want you to ask yourself the question: getting 25 cents on the dollar compared to what you could have gotten or what you will get if you build it correctly, Is that an outcome you'd be proud of? Is that something you'd go home to your partner and say, well, your significant other, hey, guess what? I got 25 cents on the dollar compared to what I could have received because you didn't build it correctly. And so, Blake, we train advisors to make sure that they really do think of that last day and ask themselves the question, what do you want to have happen on that last day? And once you determine that, do you want to get a big check like I did? Do you want to be able to walk away, leave it to a son or daughter-in-law or whatever? You should really think first what you want to have happen on that last day and then back into building a company, building a business that will reflect that desire. Because you'll be paid, I want all my advisors paid on the significant value that they created by having a company that could run with or without their day-to-day involvement, and you will be handsomely rewarded for taking that path.
Yeah, excellent. It's just super sound advice. And I think a lot of advisors are, we're so caught up in our brand as we build, because we, like you said earlier, we are the ones that they meet with. We're the ones who did the selling. To give them that permission to have that bigger vision, to back into that vision and into the owner's box and create this enterprise value is great. So if the things that you've learned on today's episode really resonate with you and you think you want to lean into this concept and you want to start building enterprise value in your business, get out of the room, build a team, take your business to the next level, we'd very much love to have you as part of our team. But one thing you can do right now is go to erinbotsford.com and download Erin's book, 7-Figure Firm, How to Build a Financial Services Business That Grows Itself. It's full of new information that will really help you kind of get your hands around all the moving parts of taking your business to that next level. And that's something we would love to see you do and would love to help you every step of the way.